Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. Of course, obviously, it's impossible not to speak about it that Rav Chaim Zatzal is no longer with us. I just wanted to share with you what his Seder Halimud was every day, just to inspire us. We are on a path to finish Daf Yomi in 7.5 years. And he was on a path to finish everything in 1 year. Every day, he would learn 11 pages of Zohar, 10 prakim of Tehillim, 8 prakim of Tanakh, 10 simanim with Mishnah Brura, 8 prakim of Rambam, 10 simanim of Torah and Shulchan Aruch, 8 blot of Talmud Bavli, 8 blot of Talmud Yerushalmi, 8 prakim of Midrashim, 8 pages, 8 daf of Kisvei Ari, 8 daf of Kisvei Haramchal, and then he would spend the balance of his time writing Chidushei Torah. So I'm not saying that we should do all of this. Halavai, Hashem should bless us to do 1% of what Rav Chaim did. But maybe we can find another limud that we can finish in 8 years with 1 page a day. One other thing that we can try and grow in, one other Seder Halimud as a schus for an Aliyas Neshama for Rav Chaim Zatzal. On that note, we're going to jump right back into Maseches Yevamos, Daf Yud Beis. As mentioned, we are a little bit behind. What we're going to do is learn Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, and then tomorrow we'll learn Yud Gimel Amud Beis as well as Yud Daled. I'll do my very best to get there. I hope I'll be able to do it. Either way, we'll catch up certainly over the course of the week. As a fair warning, on Shabbos, I have a bris and skokie in the afternoon. We're probably going to do daf earlier in the day. I'm not sure yet if it'll be in the morning, if it'll be about 2:30 mincha. We'll find the time. Anyone who hasn't taken a sheet, just grab one as you sit down, because it'll definitely help to understand the sugyas we're learning tonight. So we're about a third, almost halfway down on Yud Beis Amud Aleph, and we're going to be learning a couple of important sugyas as it relates to Yevamos. Here's the first one. Amar Rav Lili bar Mamel, Amar Mar Ukva, Amar Shmuel. So these are early Amoraim. Shmuel was a 2nd century Amora, and he said the following: Saras mima'enes asura. A mima'enes is a young girl. She's not yet bas mitzvah, and she's entered into a marriage. The halacha is that she's allowed to be mima'enes. She is allowed to, in front of Eidim, declare that she no longer wants to be married. The marriage dissolves. Poof, no get. Okay. Now let's say that mima'enes is wife number 1. But there's another wife who's fully of age. She's 12, 13, 14, however old she is. She's bas mitzvah. She is the tzaras mima'enes. So the halacha is, says Shmuel, that tzaras mima'enes is asura. Take a look at the pictures that I've drawn for you. For those of you on Zoom, I'll show you right here. You can see at the image on the top as follows. There's a man named Ruvain, and he has a brother named Shimon. Ruvain has 2 wives. Penina is an adult. She's a gedola. And Chana is a ktana. So she'll be Chana the ktana for tonight. And Chana the ktana is, let's say she's 10 years old, whatever it is. The halacha is that she's allowed to do miyun. So when Ruvain dies, she does miyun to Shimon. And then the question is, can Shimon still marry the tzara of Penina? So that is what Shmuel is talking about. And on the top in the yellow, it's a little hard to read here, but it says, tzaras mima'enes asura, that if Chana does miyun to Shimon as wife number 1, then Shimon is no longer allowed to do yibum to Penina the tzara. That is what tzaras mima'enes asura means in regards to Shmuel. We'll come back to this sheet in just a moment. But that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara continues, Liman. Who is it that she is asura to? If you want to say it's to other brothers, not just Shimon, but maybe there's Levi and Yehuda and a bunch of other brothers. If you want to say it's to all of them, if she herself, the Ketana, is allowed to marry the other brothers of Levi and Yehuda, the ones who are not even on this chart. So then, why is that true? Because the Amar Shmuel, that once she does miyun to Shimon, she's allowed to marry any of the other brothers who are still available to be married. So then, Sarasa Mibaya, of course, if Chana the Ktana herself is allowed to marry any of the subsequent brothers, not the person, not Shimon, because she did miyun to Shimon, but if she's allowed to marry Levi and Yehuda and Yisachar and Zvulun, then why would there be any problem at all with them marrying the tzara? It must therefore be Ella Lididei. What does it mean, Lididei? So take a look at Rashi. Rashi's 5 lines down. Dibur Hamaschel Ella Lididei Liyava Shemia Nabo Asura. She is not allowed to marry the Yava. Demiun Akar Le Lezika Bekoi Aleha Be'eshes Ach. Because when there is miyun, what miyun does is it is me'akir kiddushin lemafreya. What it does is it says we were never married even in the first place. And therefore, there is that now it's just a question of Eshesach, that Ruvain was her husband, right? So Ruvain is now Eshes Ach, and that is going to be problematic. So that's what the Gemara says. Why is it that we said that in Mima'enes, that this young girl who does miyun is allowed to marry other brothers, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun, because the lo abda b'humai. So she didn't do any miyun with them. She didn't do anything at all with them. So then we should have argued that Sarah nami lo abda b'humai. So we should have said that Sarah is also allowed to marry other people. Why would Shmuel say that Sarah's Mima'enes, why would Penina in this picture not be able to marry other brothers? After all, she did nothing. So the Gemara answers, Gzera mishum tsaras bito Mima'enes, one extra word of bito, and that then requires a whole nother picture. What is the case of tsaras bito Mima'enes? So in the first picture that we showed on this page, Chana was really not related to anyone at the time. But now let's look at the second picture on the page. The second picture on the page indicates as follows. There are brothers, Reuven and Shimon. However, whereas in the first picture that Chana the Ktana was not related to the family, here Chana the Ktana is actually the daughter of Shimon. Now Reuven's allowed to marry his niece, so he marries Chana the Ktana and he also marries Penina. And then Reuven dies. So now Shimon has as his daughter Chana. That's not allowed. That's not happening at all. So Chana does miyun to her own father, and Penina is the tsaras erva to Chana. And the halacha is that Shimon cannot marry Penina because she's a tsaras erva. So that's what the Gemara says, and what the page says in the black on the bottom is that the reason we're gozer in a regular case, which is this case on the top, the reason that we're gozer in a regular case of tzara mima'enes was to prevent Shimon from marrying Penina, who's tsaras erva, to his daughter. The word daughter got cut off there. Apologies. But that's what the Gemara says here. And the reason why in a classical case of tsaras mima'enes, why we're machmir isn't because it needs to be that way. Because really there's no erva at all. Because Chana the Ktana is not related to Reuven or Shimon except through that marriage, which was now undone through miyun. We were only concerned about a case where maybe Chana the Ktana was the daughter of Shimon, the niece of Reuven who she married, and therefore the tzara would be a tzaras erva, not a regular tzaras mima'enes, but a tzaras erva.
You can do miyun to your current husband, right? You're nullifying your current marriage.
You could.
Right, so then miyun, how can you do miyun before you're married to Shimon?
What do you mean?
You only do miyun after you're done with it, after you're
she does miyun after Reuven dies.
Right, but I'm saying, how could you do, she's not married yet, how could she do?
She's undoing whatever yibum would be there. The miyun effectively undoes everything and brings her back to status to
Before he does yibum.
Correct. It's in place of yibum. Correct. Yeah. The Gemara is going to kind of talk about what you're asking about in a couple of minutes. Not exactly, but close. So that's what the Gemara says, is that we had a gzeira, we're halfway down on Yud Beis Amud Aleph, of gzeira mishum tzaras bita mima'enes. We were concerned that in a case where the mima'enes of Chana the Ktana was in fact an erva to Shimon, and therefore Shimon couldn't marry obviously his daughter, and also cannot marry Penina because she's tzaras erva. We were so concerned about someone making a mistake with a regular case of Chana the Ktana not being an erva that we forbade the marrying of the tzara, even in a case when Chana was not related to the family.
So Penina is automatically a status of usher once this relationship happens.
Correct. She's
Of no
tzaras
fault
erva.
of her own.
It's never, no fault of her own, just the
When you say
mitzvahs.
this relationship, what do you mean?
The
When she
Chana
falls
Shimon-
to Zika, when the
No, he's just saying that when the fact that Shimon happens to be the father of Chana, which inherently makes her an erva to Shimon in a case of Yibum, so it's of no fault of Penina. She just happened to be one of the wives of Reuven, who happened to have a wife that was an erva to his brother. So what?
How can this person be an erva when there's no relation?
Because if you're the tzara of an erva, then there's no Yibum. So Penina is a tzara of Chana, and Chana is the
That
daughter.
goes from all the way on the Mishnah on Beis
Yes, exactly right. That's
All right.
exactly right. So says the Gemara, wait 1 second. V'tzaras bito mima'enes mi asira. Is it really problematic for Penina, even in the case of erva, even when Chana the Ktana is the daughter of Shimon, even in that case, would we still say that the tzara is not allowed to get married? After all, v'hatnan, our very Mishnah, what does our Mishnah say on Daf Beis, going all the way back, like Michael was saying? V'hatnan, v'kulan, in all cases, imeso, o mianu, and there's supposed to be another word, oniskarshu, tzarosehen mutaros. So what's our case? Our case is a case of miyun. And our Mishnah says that all of the cases of miyun, there's no problem with the tzara. So how can you have a gzeira derabanan? That in a regular case where there's no erva by a miyun, we say it's not allowed because of the concern of if only Chana the Ktana was the daughter of Shimon when Shitaka is an erva, even that should be mutter based on our Mishnah. Even when Chana is the daughter of Shimon, the niece of Ruvain, Ruvain dies. Now the wife number one to Shimon and Yibum should be his daughter. Pashat, that's Aser. So then even the tzara should be mutter according to our Mishnah. It says the Gemara, wait a second. Demiyana biman. This was a little bit to what Zayd was saying earlier. Where was the miyun that took place? Demiyana biman. Ilema demiyana bibaal. If she did miyun to her husband before he died, well, what's that called? Hainu grusha. That is called grusha. And our Mishnah actually has that as one of the cases. Look, one line up, the little aleph there. That is a quote from our Mishnah, O niskarshu. So that means that miyun and niskarshu are the same thing, which of course doesn't make sense. The Mishnah wouldn't say both, and therefore it can't be that the miyun of our Mishnah is talking about a grusha. Ella lav. It must be Zayd that it was biyavam, that the miyun was done to Shimon. The miyun was done to the looming yavam. And what does that seem to say? It seems to be that this Mishnah includes our case to say that the tzara should be muteres, even in the case of erva. Even if Penina is an Eshes erva, if she's a tzaras erva, it should still be mutter. Says the Gemara, nope, you're not right. Lo, why not? Because le'olam, really, what's going on in our Mishnah? The miyun of our Mishnah is also le'olam bebaal. It really is talking about her having done miyun to Ruvain before he died, the tregavne gerushin. And there are two different types of gerushin, two different types of divorce. One, we'll call it classical divorce, regular couple, a get is issued, v'chule. In this case, there's a different kind of divorce, and it's a divorce called miyun. And miyun is not a regular divorce, b'shtar, it's only done be'edus, but nevertheless, there's two types of gerushin. Says the Gemara, Umayshna kimiyana bebal teakrinu lenisuin. Why is it that when she's mima'enes bebal, let's say before Ruvain died, she brings Adam and says, I no longer want to be married to this guy? Why does that work? De'akrinu lenisuin, because as I mentioned earlier, this is called being me'aker kiddushin lemafreya. It's as if the marriage never happened. So says the Gemara, if that's true, kimiyana beyavam nami nisuin kamoi ka'akra. If it's true, then there should really be no problem with the tzara, because it's as if Chana was never married in the first place to Ruvain. And then she's not a tzaras heir, she's nothing. She's a zero. If miyun is retroactive undoing of the marriage, then how can you have a case of tzaras, even tzaras bito mima'enes, even a severe case where there's erva involved? There's no erva involved. There's no erva. Ruvain was never married to Chana. With this halachic mechanics of how miyun works. It rolls back the clock and says, you got married 6, but there's nothing there. So the Gemara is bothered if the whole mechanism of miyun is that it says, today I'm announcing a divorce, limafreya, back to the wedding date 5 years ago, then it's as if Ruvain never married Chana, which means that Shimon's daughter is not an erva to him b'yibum because the marriage never happened. Then the tzara should be totally fine. That's the Gemara's question. Brilliant question. Says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down. Mishum, the reason why we're concerned is because of a comment of Detani Rami Bar Yechezkel. What did Rami Bar Yechezkel teach us? Detani Rami Bar Yechezkel, miyano bebaal. If a woman does miyun to her husband, muteres la'aviv, she can even marry the father of her husband. So that means, let's say Ruvain marries Chana. She's a ketana. Chana does miyun to Ruvain, and then Chana says, I want to marry Ruvain's father, Yaakov. Mutter. But that's only with the miyun of the husband. What happens if there's miyun to a yavam? There, Rami Bar Yechezkel says different. There, but yavam asura le'aviv. If she does miyun to Shimon, she cannot then marry Shimon's father. Why not? Alma, what do we see from the comment of Rami Bar Yechezkel? We see that Mishas Nefila Nires Kekalaso. Something happens with Yibum. That the second there's a Zikas Yibum between Shimon, Ruvain died, between Shimon and Chana, it's as if the surah of a father-in-law now exists. Yibum, the Zikas Yibum is stronger than the resulting retroactive undoing of a regular marriage of a husband and a wife. But when miyun happens with a yavam, there's still a skeleton of what could have been a relationship, and therefore we don't allow it. And hachanami here in our case too, mishas nefila nearest ketzaras bito, and therefore in our case we do say still that tzaras bito is asura, like the shita that we started with today of Shmuel. End of sugya number 1 for today. Sugya number 2.
It's like when he dies, you can't like retroactively do it. Like you gotta.
When Yibum, when she's, the language is nofelis, when she is nofelis to Yibum happens. The Metzias of Yibum happens. Yibum doesn't happen. the need for Yibum or Chalitza happens without anyone's, Reuven died. It's just what it is. The second that happens, even if she's Mima'enes, but you can't undo that skeletal frame of Yibum, and therefore, even if she's Mima'enes to the Yavam, she's not allowed to marry the father.
First of all, they have the same father.
Correct. But so
she's doing even on the second.
right, but when it comes to a regular husband, so what? When it comes to a regular husband,
I'm saying, but she was married to Reuven.
No, she was Ma'ayin.
no, she was not Mamayin Reuven. She was Mamayin Shimon.
I'm saying that she was married to Reuven. So then Reuven's father's usher.
For a while until
Till she does miyun.
Right, but if she doesn't do me she's doing me on Shimon.
Doesn't matter. It's retroactive undoing of the first marriage.
right.
You're still retroactively undoing the first marriage. Even though
Right.
he's dead.
He died. The point is that we're turning back the clocks. It's as if nothing ever happened.
But even so,
We need Rishonim on this because there's like a.
I wanted to say like the idea is that once he's dead, the marriage already ended one way. You can't do mean on him anymore.
It's not on Reuven. So I would have argued that if Reuven died and he didn't have a brother, if Reuven died, that is the case, Taka. If Reuven dies, she can marry his father. No Yibum. Regular case.
Well, that's what Tzavari and Yehuda did.
If Reuven died, but she did mean already.
No miyun. If Reuven just died, their whole marriage was Kedushin Derabanan, because that's what the Ketana, that's always Kedushin Derabanan. So let's say Reuven, there's only 3 people in the story. Reuven is married to Chana the Ketana, and then Reuven dies. So can Chana marry Reuven's father? I don't know. I'm just guessing that the answer is yes. But in the case of Yibum, we know for sure what's happening. And that's why I said we need Rishonim to understand how does miyun really work. The Rishonim have to jump in and say miyun is whatever. It's however it works. We'd have to spend time on that, which we don't have. But that's sugya number 1, which is about saras mima'enes. Sugya number 2, we're 6 lines before the wide lines. Amar Ravasi. What about saras islandess? Saras islandess, she's also asura. So what's the case? The case is where Shimon is married to Chana. Let's say she's an adult and she's infertile. We don't know yet when he learned of that information. Okay, and then he dies. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, blank the case because I don't remember whose name I said. Let's say Reuven has 2 wives, Chana and Penina. Okay, and Chana is barren; she's not able to have children. Hysterectomy, and then he dies. Reuven dies. Shimon has no yibum at all, not to the tzara, and not to, and we'll see in a moment, not even to the barren woman of Chana. Let's see what's going on here. And we're talking specifically about Tsaras island. It says the Gemara, why is it Asura? Why is it that he cannot marry the Tsara? Because Shenemar, V'hayu b'chor asher teleid. Because the general din of Yibum is based on the pasuk in Chumash, and the pasuk in Chumash says, V'hayu b'chor asher teleid yakum al shem achiv hameis v'lo yimachesh shemo Yisrael. But if she's not able to have children, then how can she bring out a generation to be representative of her husband that died? And therefore, Prat La'ayla She'ena Yuledas. She's not able to have children. There's no nefilas yibum. The mechanics of yibum don't kick in. You need a woman who's capable of having children. Masiv Rav Sheshes says, wait 1 second. I'm going to give you fair warning here, is that the question we're going to ask from this brisa is from a diuk of this brisa that we're going to see in a few lines. But first, let's learn the brisa, then we'll learn the diuk, and then we'll understand our question. Remember, we're trying to say right now that the tsaras islandess is asura. What does the brisa say? Shlosha achen, 3 brothers. Nesu and shlosha nashim nochrios. They marry 3 random women. Just to be clear, in Yevamos, when we say nochrios, it doesn't mean nochrios like not Jewish. It just means that they're not related to the family. 3 regular random women that are not related to the men and they're not related to each other. They're 3 random women, right? Different families around the community. Fine. 3 brothers marry 3 women. Umeis echad mehem. and one woman's husband died. So let's say Ruvain died and he was married to Chana, and then one of the brothers went over to this woman who was now the Yevama. The Asaba Sheni Maimer Umes. Maimer is Rashi calls this. Where did I put this? Rashi calls it Kedusha Yevama. It's not regular Kedushin, it's a Kedushin of Yibum, but it's not a full Yibum. It's like a quasi state of Yibum. So he does this quasi state of Yibum, and then he dies. So now she's been Nofeles twice. She was Nofeles from Reuven to Shimon, then Shimon did this Maimer, and Shimon died. She's Nofeles again to Levi. Says the Gemara, Hare'elu Choltzos v'lo misyavos. All of the wives in this picture, all of them are going to do chalitza. Why? Shene'emar umeis echad mehen Yevama yavo aleha, that if only one of the brothers dies, then they should get married through Yibum. Mishe aleha zikas yavam echad, below zikas shnei Yevamin. What happened to this in Nebuch's story? Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Reuven's married to Chana. Reuven dies. Shimon does Maimer to Chana. So that was Nefila number one. Shimon dies. Now she's Nofeles a second time. Reuven to Shimon was one. Now Shimon to Levi the second time. Says the Gemara, no Yibum there, not allowed. Because the whole nature of Yibum is that it has to be like the pasuk says. It has to be umeis echad mehem, not two. And says Rashi, a key Rashi for the lumdus of this sugya, which we don't have time for. Rashi's 10 lines from the thick lines. Rashi says, "Dichsiv umeis echad mehem v'lo zu," not this woman. Shemesu beis be'aleha v'zikas shnehem aleha. It's not like a regular case where you may have two brothers from one nefilas Yibum. It's two nefilas of Yibum. Because Reuven died, she fell to Shimon. Shimon died, and then for the second time, she fell to Levi. That's not that. Then we don't do Yibum. We only do Chalitza in that case. The Ketani Allah, and here's where we get to what we're talking about. Amar Rav Yosef. This has to be a mistake. Rav Yosef was an Amor in the 3rd century. The Ketani is a Brisa. So sometimes it could mean that he was Tani, but the Meforshim changed it to Rav Yossi. Rav Yossi says, Zohi tzaras eshes ach me'av she'isser nefila garamla. This is a terrible scenario where of the brothers of one father, she fell from one to the next. Shalom atzinu b'chol haTorah kula kegonzos. There is no case like this in all of Torah. Says the Gemara, says Rashi, 4 lines from the bottom, Shalom atzinu b'chol haTorah shetei aser. We have no mari makomos here to say that there's any yibum in this case, none whatsoever. Rashi continues, Elamid Rabbanan hu demitzra. We just don't allow the yibum on a rabbinic level. Back in the Gemara says, let's make a diuk now in Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said that this strange case of a double nefila from Reuven to Shimon and then Shimon to Levi, and that therefore she has to do chalitza. Zohi, when it says Zohi in Rabbi Yossi's language, that's a language that says, teach me some Torah, the me'ute mai. What are we excluding from this case? Now we get the hook back into our case. Lav the me'ute tzaras islandis tesharia. Shouldn't we see from this sugya that maybe the tzaras islandis should be muteres, not like Ravasi said, 10 lines up, right? Not like Ravasi, Kasha and Ravasi. Says Gemara, lo. No, you totally misunderstood that. It's the Mu'ute Tzaras Island is the Asira. It's to teach me that she's Asira. That doesn't work. Says the Gemara, no. Umay Zohi. The language of Zohi is to change, tell me something different. Zohi, the way that we learned it, taught me about a case of Isser. If Zohi is a reversal language, teach me something mutter. So my Zohi to Isser nefila garam latza rasa boya chalitza. That a tzara in such a case would need chalitza, but islandess, when it comes to an islandess, afilu chalitza lo boya, she needs nothing because she's totally not shaykh to the world of Yibum. My taima. Why the distinction between the case of islandess, where she's asura, in other words, where there is no yibum, and to the tzara as well, versus this double nefila case where we're mekel, seemingly, that there's at least some chalitza, says the Gemara, because hadar raisa hadar abanan, the cases are incomparable. They're totally different realms. The case that we're dealing with an islandess, she's a psul min Torah, that she's incapable of having children. She cannot be makayim shem la'achiv. So therefore, the whole thing is over. The whole thing is done. Asks the Gemara, hang on one second. Let's go back to our Mishnah yet again. Tanan, 3 lines from the bottom. Yud Beis Merala. V'chula nimeso mi'anu in nisgarsho nimsu islandess tzarosein mutaros. What did our Mishnah say? That if there's an islandess, that tzaros mutter. The whole time Ravasi's talking, 12 lines up, 5 lines before the wide lines. What does Ravasi say? Tzaros islandess asura. What about the Mishnah on Daf Beis? If there's an islandess, then what's the din? The Mishnah says, and we're looking at this 2 lines from the bottom of the page, islandess. Shinimtu islandess, tzarosen mutaros. So Ravasi, you have a black on white Mishnah that is not like your din. So the Gemara responds, that's not true. Lo kasha. Kan shehikirba. In one case, he knew when he married her that she was an islandess. Okay, we'll see what the importance of that is in a minute. And kan shelo hikirba, gorgeous Rashi. Says Rashi 3 lines from the bottom. Dibra maslo kan hikirba. To Ravasi, who said that the tsaras islandess is asura. Listen to the lamdus. He knew the second he met her. He knew she said it in Shidduchim. I'm not able to have children. The ein kan mekach tos. The wedding is chal. Because he knew that was the case. That's why Ravasi says it's a problem, because their marriage was really a marriage. She was an islandess from day one. She was open about it. She knew she couldn't have kids. So she said, I can't have kids. She said, I want to marry you anyways. Then that's not a mekach tos, that's a real marriage. Then the tzara cannot be married through yibum. However, says Rashi at the end of that line, umasnis, in our Mishnah where it says that a tzara is allowed to marry, what's that case? Bishalo hikir ba kishen nasashi islandess. When he married her, he didn't know that she was an islandess. Umekcho mekach tos. The whole marriage is a zero. They were never married in the first place. That's why the tzara is allowed, because there was no marriage. If you marry someone bidas that she's going to have children and she's not able, fine. It's unfortunate, but that's a mekach tos legamre. So the tzara, of course she's allowed to get married. There was no marriage to stop the tzara from getting married. That's why our Mishnah is makil, because our Mishnah is talking about a case where the guy knew that his wife wasn't able to have children. Fine. That he knew that they weren't able. No, that's the other case. That's Rav Yossi, Rav Asi. Rav Asi knew that she was not able to have children. Therefore, there was no mekach tos. Therefore, the tzara is not allowed to marry. But our Mishnah says that he did not know. Therefore, the wedding is a zero, mekach tos, and therefore there was no marriage. And therefore, the tzara is going to be totally allowed to remarry. Beautiful Rashi. So that's what the Gemara says is a distinction. And then the Gemara says a beautiful raya l'davar. Dekanami, I can show you that this is right. Because what does our Mishnah say? Dekatani, shenimtu. He found out that she was. Beautiful. That shows you that in our Mishnah, he didn't know when he got married. He only found out afterwards. Mekach tos. Therefore, the tzara is allowed to get married because she's really not a tzara. She's a regular woman. She only appears to be a tzara. And it doesn't say v'lo ktani shehayu, that she was. Beautiful. Now, halacha l'maisa, how do we paskin? Not like this Gemara. Omar Rava, turning to the top of Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, Hilchasa, tzaras islandess muteras. We hold that the tzara of an islandess is allowed, ve'afilu hikirba, even if he knew that was the case, that she was not able to have children. Ve'afilu tzaras bito islandess, even in a case where the islandess was his daughter, was Shimon's daughter, and he would have in theory fallen to her b'yibum, which makes her an erva, doesn't matter. Or mekel lagamri. And why is that the case? Look at the second line of Rashi. Rashi says, in the midst of Dibur HaMaskil Hilchasa, Rashi says at the end of the line, Dichi osa rachmana tzoras erva, that was only b'makom mitzvah hu de asra. The only time the Torah forbids a tzaras erva is when there's a mitzvah of yibum. The hakevan de island is he, because here we know she cannot have children. Even had she not been an erva, she can't have children. There's no yibum. So then tzaras erva shlo b'makom mitzvah, and therefore there's no problem with the tzara. So the Gemara kind of pulls out the carpet from under Ravasi and says, whoa, hold on one second. She's never shaykh to that. So when you're a kan behikir bakan shlo hikir ban in our Mishnah, it's mutter. Ravasi says, no, she's never shaykh. And therefore, it is mutter for a tzara of an islandess to get married. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. It's good that you were able to undermine Ravasi, but you also undermined a part of our Mishnah, because our Mishnah said, that's a problem. Our Mishnah says shenimtu, that he found out afterwards. Says the Gemara, Tani shahayu. You're right, we should change the girsa. Yasa Ravin, Amar Rav Yochanan, achas tzaras mima'enes. Rav Yochanan says that whether or not we're talking about the case we started with his tzaras mima'enes, ve'achas tzaras islandess, the second case we dealt with, ve'achas tzaras machzir grushaso, which we dealt with a couple of blot ago, kulan mutaros, end of sugya. Wow. Okay, this also requires a lot of commentary, which I don't know. But how did we just undo all of the work that we just did? But that's what the Gemara says, is that in all of these cases, the tzara is allowed. Next sugya. They're all connected though. Tani Rabbi, this is faster than the previous 20 lines, which took up almost all of our time. We have a lot to do. Let's go. Tani Rabbi Kame de Rav Nachman. Shalosh nashim mishamshos b'moch. There are 3 women who, when they have tashmish hamita, they should use a moch. A moch here is basically a piece of fabric that is inserted prior to tashmish hamita to prevent a woman from getting pregnant. Says the Gemara, Ketana, Meuberes, Umenika, a child who is underage, Me'uberes, a woman who's already pregnant. Umanika, a woman who is nursing. Says the Gemara, Kitana, why is it that a Kitana, if she's having Tashma Shemitah, she should use a moch, Shema Tis'aber v'Shema Tamuz, a double Shema. First of all, we're concerned she might get pregnant. And if she gets pregnant, we're concerned she might die. Her body might not be able to handle it. Me'uberes, if a woman is pregnant, we're concerned that she'll get pregnant again. Says the Gemara, Shema Ta'asa Ubra Sandal, that maybe if she gets pregnant again, this new embryo that implants will encroach on the space of the initial embryo, and then it'll make it a sandal, which is basically a misformed embryo. I looked this up today. This does happen. There are a number of recorded cases of women who had intercourse, and they happen to have had, for whatever reason, another egg drop and fertilized, and they became pregnant. There are almost 10 recorded cases of it. There's a name for it. It's called superfetation, I think is what it's called, something along those lines. It's a very rare scenario, but it can happen. And apparently they knew about this in the Gemara. So it says the Gemara, we're afraid that if a woman's already pregnant, that she should use birth control of some kind. It's not the common science. The statistics on that are, I don't know, whatever. They're so unreasonably low that I guess we're not concerned about it today. And Menika, what's the concern about a Menika, about a woman who's nursing? There's Shema Tigmo Yevamos. We're afraid that she'll end up weaning her son too early, because if she gets pregnant, then her milk supply could change at that point, and it could force her to wean her son. And then it's not like today where you can buy formula in the store, add a little water and everything is fine, and maybe the baby would die. Let's define some of these terms. How do we define a ktana? Says the Gemara, from her 11th birthday to her 12th birthday. During that time, if she's mishameshes, she should be mishameshes b'mov. Pachos mikan v'yeser alkein. If she's younger than that or older than that, mishameshes kedarka v'holechas tivi Reb Meir. What does that mean? If she's younger. If at the age of 11, we're concerned about her getting pregnant and dying, why isn't it true when she's younger? Says Rashi, immediately to our left, she's too young to conceive. She's not ovulating yet, and therefore we don't have to worry about her dying because she's not going to get pregnant. So that's what the Gemara says. Once she's older than 12, we're not worried because we assume that her body can handle it. In both cases, there's no moch. We assume that she will be fine. Because we assume that we don't have to assume that terrible things will happen. We assume that she will be fine even at the age of 12. Asks the Gemara Kasha. Because when we said about a ktana, a double shema, first we were concerned that maybe she'd get pregnant, and second, if she got pregnant, that maybe she'd die. It implies that not all ktanos who get pregnant die. Then there's a possibility that a girl who has tashma shemitah between her 11th and 12th birthdays, that she could conceive and not die. Says the Gemara, that poses a huge question. Im kain matzinu chamoso mema'enes. We have a case where a mother-in-law can do miyun. Now, I'll define this in a moment, but let's just hit to the question and then we'll look at the pictures again. Vitznan, what did we say in our Mishnah on Daf Beis? We said that there's no way that a mother-in-law could ever have a case of miyun, and that's not true. For this, we turn to the pictures. On the back of page 1, we're going to speak about the case of matzinu chamoso mema'enes. Okay. Here's the case. Leah is married to Shimon. Leah is less than 12 years old. She's a katana. She's between her 11th and 12th birthdays. And Shimon dies first. And look at the note below. After Shimon dies, Leah marries Reuven. Okay, good. Now, there's something else that took place here, is that during the time that Shimon and Leah were married, they had a child named Sarah. Sarah is currently a tinok. The mother's only 11 years old, whatever. By her 12th birthday, she had a baby. So they had a baby whose name was Sarah. Sarah is a tinok. So Shimon died. I put 2 Shimons in. Shimon died. The Shimon all the way on the right side. Pick another name. Let's put Levi in there. Sorry about that. Levi marries Sarah. It's a kiddushin derabanan. Obviously, there's no taj. She's a ketana. She's a tinok. So there's no marriage there. I mean, it's only derabanan. That's step number 2. And that look down in the notes in the green. When Shimon remarries Sarah, it makes Leah his mother-in-law. So it really should say Levi. The Levi, the Shimon all the way on the right side. Sorry, I gave him the same name. That's confusing. So when Shimon marries Sarah's daughter, that makes Leah Shimon's mother-in-law. And then If Ruvain dies, then we can have a case of miyun, where Leah can be mima'enes, and she can undo this Shimon on the right, his marriage to Sarah. Apologize for the confusing name, but that is what is going on here, that the mother-in-law, Leah, can create for miyun, and that is against our Mishnah. So the Gemara says, what should we do about that? Well, if we should change one of our assumptions. The assumption that we should change is Ema Shema Tis Aber B'Tammuz. Maybe the Shema is only one Shema. Maybe it's only Shema Tis Aber, but if she conceives, it's definitely Tammuz. So the case is not possible for the Leah in this picture to have had Sarah between the ages of 11 and 12. It's not possible. So then the Gemara says, to Amar Rabba Bar Levi, Gvul Yeshla. Here are the parameters. Kodem Hazman Hazeh, before a girl turns 11, Eina Misaberes Kol Iker, she's not able to conceive. Toch Hazman Hazeh, from her 11th birthday up until her 12, He Mesa Ubra Mes, both of them will die. Rahman al-Litzlan. La'achar Zman Hazeh, from her 12th birthday and onwards, He Chaya Ubra Chaya. So that's what the Gemara says, and we therefore might assume that that our case of Chamosa Mima'enes is not a shaila because there's no such thing as a ketana between 11 and 12 who's able to have a baby in the first place. Says the Gemara, Eini, is that true? After all, the Hatani Rabba Bar Shmuel, so here, I didn't know what was going on here until I looked into this a little bit. We're looking at the last word of this, Eim Chamoso Shekvar Yoldu. So here, take a look at Rashi. Rashi says 8 lines up, Shekvar Yoldu, Umidetali Taima Bivlad Nichlal de Ktanahi. The Ilav Ktanahi, listening Shekvar Gadlo. A very gentle diuk in the language. Why does it say Yoldu instead of Gadlo? It therefore means that it is possible for a girl to have a child while she is in her 11th year of life. Olam, you're right, it is a double Shema. Shema Tis Aber Shema Tammuz. And what do we do with our question? Velakashya Hach. We had our question about Chamosa Mima'enes. So Amar Rav Safra. Nope, there's something else going on here. Banim Harehim Kisimanim. If a girl who's 11 years old gives birth, it's already a sign that she's hit puberty, that she's hit maturity, to the point that we don't have to ask anymore if she's a ketana. If she can have a baby, she's not a ketana anymore. And then the Ista Amre is a little bit of a different language. Some say that halachically speaking, that normally we look for simanim, we look for shtei sa'aros. We want to know if there's at least some pubic hair growing that we could measure her age. So the Gemara says, banim, having a child is way better of an indicator of maturity than seeing shtei sa'aros. Lamai nafkamina. What's the difference between Rav Safra and the Ista Amre? Rav Safra said that banim are simanim, and the Ista Amre said that banim are adife mi simanim. Says the Gemara, de'afilu the Rav Yehuda damarachi that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, who's of the opinion that shtei saros is not enough, we need to be mar behashachor. There has to be a lot of hair. So then Babanim Modi says, okay, normally Rabbi Yehuda says there has to be a lot of hair, but if she has a child, so then the way it would work out is that don't worry about the simanim anymore. Says the Gemara, Rav Zvid Amar on the top of Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, he says, Ein banim velo simanim. Quite similar to what we've been learning, that there's no such thing as having children without simanim. And he says it as a halachic assumption. We're not sure that she has it. We just know that if she delivered a child, that she has simanim, that she has at least shtei sairos. Says the Gemara, why do you have to assume? V'nivdok, just check and see if she has shtei sairos. If you want to know that she's a gedola, just check. Says the Gemara, chayshin and shema nashu, because it's possible that due to the stress of pregnancy that some of the hair may have fallen out, and that's just not an indicator. It's just a halachic assumption that if she's able to have a child, that we don't care about simanim anymore. Says the Gemara, hanicha lemanda amar chosheshin. Not everybody says we're concerned that the hair might fall out. According to the one who says that we're not concerned about the se'ar falling out, what would then be the concern? Says the Gemara, even if a person is going to say that we're not so concerned about hair, we are concerned about hair falling out during childbirth because of the stress on the body. And therefore, we use the halachic assumption that banim is a raya for simanim, even if there is no hair. That brings us to the two dots, Gimel Amud Aleph, 5 lines down. Ketzad potros sarosein. This is a quote from our Mishnah. Minohani mili. How do we know that this is true? Minohani mili, that what? Look at the 5th line of Rashi. Minohani mili, the tsaras tsarasa ptura. That the tsaras tsara. So this can happen when you have a whole string of brothers across the family, and a woman gets passed on from husband to husband through yibum, and one of those husbands already has another wife. So if Reuven is married to two women and he dies, Shimon takes those two women with his other wife. His wife is Sarah. So says the Gemara, how do we know that she's going to be Asura as well, or part of Yibum? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Kra Litzror, HaTorah Rib Satzaros Harbe. It says Litzror, two ratios. We saw this drasha already. We saw it on Daf Gimel. And the Gemara says that based on the word litzror, we know to include other tzaros tzara. Rav Ashi Amar, we don't need a pasuk in Chumash for this. He says svara he. It's just logical to assume that tzara my taima asira. Why is it that we would assume that a tzara is forbidden? Says the Gemara, b'makom erva kaimas, and tzara nami b'makom erva kaima. It's not much of a difference. It's still someone. This woman is still with another one. The tzara is with this woman who's an erva, so therefore it should always be the case, even without the pasuk. The Gemara does not entertain how they answer each other's questions. How would Rabbi Yehuda answer for Rav Ashi, and for Rav Ashi and vice versa? Next two dots. Ketzad im mesu. So we had said that there is a scenario where Yibum doesn't fall, where Yibum is not nofel, and that is if the woman is megareshes before the husband dies, because then Yibum only applies if the husband dies while they're married. So it says the Gemara about 10 lines down, that if there was first marriage and only afterwards was there gerushin, uraminhi, that's not so simple. Says the Gemara, and we're going to look at this last picture in a minute. Gimel Achen, there are three brothers. Shnayim mehem nesuin beis achayos. Two of the three brothers are married to sisters. The echad nasui nachris, and one is married to a random woman. Says the Gemara, giresh echad mi baile achayos. One of the brothers who's married to one of the sisters divorces his wife, umeis hanasui nachris, and then the man who was married to the random woman, he dies. The kinsa hamagaresh umeis, and then the kinsa hamagaresh, he marries the woman that was divorced, and then he dies. And this is a very confusing case. And then what do we see from here? And we'll look up the picture in a second. It says the Gemara, Zohi Sha'amru She'im Meso Niskarshu Tzaros and Mutaros. So let's take a minute to understand what's going on. Let's look at the last page here. It's a shorter diagram, and this time I put the right names. So it says the Gemara as follows. You have three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and you have two sisters, Chana and Penina. Reuven is not married to one of the sisters. Reuven's married to Malka. Malka is a random woman not related to the Chana Penina family. Shimon married Penina. Levi is married to Chana. So let's follow the steps here. Shimon divorces Penina. That's the X on the blue line there with the number 1. Okay, that was step number 1. And then Reuven died, which means that Shimon and Levi, in theory, they could marry Malka. So that's what the Gemara here says over here. Zohi sha'amru she'imesu onizgarshu tsarosehen mutaros. That there, Levi would be able to marry Malka because, yeah. What? What'd you say?
She's a tzara?
Because what happened is that Malka fell b'yibum. Oh, wait, I put steps here. 1, 2. Yeah, so first was the gerushin, is that Shimon divorces Penina. Step number 2 is that Reuven died. And he was, yes, that's correct. Step number 2 is that Reuven died and he was properly married to Malka. At that time, Shimon was still alive. So there's yibum from Malka to Shimon. And then Shimon dies, and this woman should fall the yibum to Levi, but Levi's already married. So now she's going to be the second wife. She's the tzara. Zuhi sha'amru she'imeso niskarshu tzarosen mutaros. He's allowed to marry Malka. That's what the Gemara says is the case over here. It says the Gemara that this case poses a problem because Taima, almost halfway down in Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, Taima de giresh ve'achar kach kines. If you look at the language here, it first says that there was a gerushin first. First, there was a divorce, and only afterwards did he then marry the new woman. Aval kines ve'achar kach giresh lo. And if you look back at the 2 dots, what did we start with? That it was kines first and then ulisov giresh. So this case of the 3 brothers doesn't match up with the opening comment of the Gemara. V'afilu kines ulisov giresh. It should be the other way around. That only if it's giresh v'achar kach kines. Amar Rav Yirmiyah Tavra. This Gemara is broken. The Gemara says very unclear, very hard to understand this Gemara. Misha shana zu lo shana zu. The one who said this didn't say that. These two comments cannot be written by the same author. Hai Tana, one of the Tanas hold that savar misa mapeles is that misa is what causes for the yibum to fall. The Hai Tana savar nisun harishonim mapilin, and some say it's from the first marriage, and it wasn't from the death; it was from the first marriage. This is as you can imagine from the language already, a big discussion in the Rishonim. If you have a few minutes, look at Rashi Hai Tana for the next 10 lines in Rashi. Rava disagrees with this. Rava says I could make these two cases work together with one another. Rava Amar Lo'olam Chad Tanahu. Really, both of these comments are said by the same person. V'zo ve'in sarich lomar zo katani. Not only is it true here, but it's even true there. Not only is it true if the gerushin was first followed by the Knisa, but even if the Knisa was first followed by the gerushin. Last little sugya for tonight at the 2 dots, 2/3 of the way down. And that's what the Gemara says on Daf Beis and Beis. I'll just read the whole line there because it helps to understand what's going on. Anyone who was able to do miyun, below miyana, and did not do miyun, sarasa choletzes v'lo mis Yevamos. The Mishnah says that the tzara has to do chalitza. So it says the Gemara, why don't you just tell her to do miyun right now? Why does he have to do chalitza? Tell her to do the miyun right now. Obviously, we don't allow that. Why don't we let her do that right now? Because says the Gemara, Lema Misayeh Lele Rabbi Yoshia. Because this aligns with Rabbi Yoshia's shita. Damar Rabbi Yoshia Mima'enes Lama Amaro Ve'in Mima'enes Lazikaso. She can only be Mima'enes to a Ma'amar, someone who has Kiddusha Yevama, a Kiddushin that applies only between a Zika and the Yevama. But Ve'in Mima'enes Lazikaso. Maybe she can't do the miyun, and that seems to be what our Mishnah implies. Says the Gemara, that's not correct. Lo Soras Erba Shaini. When we're talking about a second wife to a first wife who's an erva, things are different. The Tani Rami Bar Yechezkel, and this we saw already today, that miyana bebal muteres la'aviv, miyana beyavam asura la'aviv. And what did we learn from that line? That by yavam, as mentioned, there's still some skeleton of a relationship, even if she does miyun. Alma mishas nefila neres kekalaso, halchanami mishas nefila neres ketzaras bito. It seems to be that there is some type of skeleton of a relationship with the yavama, and therefore the miyun was not done, not because we hold like Rav Oshia. We will stop right here. We'll pick up in Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow night with the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, finishing up Yud Gimel and learning Yud Daled. Wishing you all a beautiful night.